Hello everyone, welcome back to the Agni / episode. Now, I apologize for being away for a little while. Part of this was busy with holiday stuff, part of this was being busy with work, and part of this was looking for just a really excellent slash match, because it's been a while since I've done a slash, so I wanted a really exceptional one that allows me to showcase a lot of different things that players might want to be aware of, and this is that match. I get to talk about people leaving briefly due to game crashing or whatever. I get to talk about the two most common mistakes that SMITE players make. I get to talk about all kinds of cool things here. So, right off the top, let's get into it. I'm looking at these team comps. Now, it's a little hard to see because of the Thor's character, but this is the Ragnarok Force X. It's at the blank screen right now. That's Thor. The first thing I'm looking at as a mage is the fact that each team only has one dedicated frontliner. They have Atlas, we have Geb. So, as an Agni, and I've talked about this before, I'm going to be splashing just a little bit of protections. I'm already looking, mentally, at building the Talisman, and of course going for my old standby Warlock staff. But my build past that is up in the air for me because I'm also looking at Nemesis and Cirquet. Now, as a mage, you should always be looking at the enemy assassins, and these two are particularly tough to think about because both of them are known to build into defense. Both Nemesis and Cirquet players have been known to build protections instead of power, and that can make confronting either of them a fairly dicey prospect, because if you build incorrectly, or, alternatively, don't adjust to how they're building, you could have a really hard time dealing with them. So I'm not sure exactly how tanky the enemy team is going to be. Now I can get away with the Talisman immediately because we have Poseidon, so any damage I'm not doing, he'll pick up. So I'm not really worried about the team's damage falling too far behind, especially since I still intend on building strong amounts of damage anyways. I'm not going full warrior, I'm just using the Talisman for a combination of power and protections. But I'm not sure if I'll need to go full pen with Soul Reaver, or if I'm going to need to go more power if they both decide to go with damage. I'm not sure about that yet. That's something I'll find out later on in the match. But that's what I'm thinking about right now. So let's go on ahead and skip 30 seconds. Actually, let's skip a little bit farther. And we're just hanging around here. I've got, of course, my Talisman. I'm starting up my Warlock staff. And I'm very curious to see how they're going to wind up building. I do a quick check to see what my allies are building there. And off we go for the fight. Now, this is really interesting. The Geb, by the way, shout out to the Geb, does a great job of keeping the Nemesis aggression off. And her being very aggressive is an interesting thing to me. She was willing to initiate without Atlas there. So right off the top, I'm thinking to myself, is Nemesis going to go tanky? Because you'll notice the Nemesis went in and aggroed, but the Cirquet didn't, and the Cirquet was there. So it's a possibility. I'm not sure yet, but it's something I'll be looking at. And as I go through the match, you'll see the Nemesis get tankier. I don't even bother checking builds, because I can see her getting tankier. Now, this is something very specific to Agni. I'm going to go back for the blue buff here. Heimdall is going to help me with this, but I'm only going for this because I'm not level 5 yet. Once Agni hits level 5, he really doesn't need the blue buff, so Agni only really needs it really early on in most matches. In Conquest, when you start at level 1, there's a distinct possibility you'll need to pick up 2 of these if the match is slow enough. But in most other modes, you only will technically need it once. In Arena, you don't necessarily pick this up as Agni because you're going to get to level 5 even faster in Arena. The passive experience gain rate is much faster in Arena. But in Slash here, I am looking to pick this up just this one time to really support my early game because I'm only level 5, my abilities are very expensive, I don't have my items built up, of course. So this is one of the rare occasions where picking up the mana buff as Agni is actually a good thing. Okay, so, and even in Conquest, you only really pick it up if you're solo Agni, which isn't even that great to begin with. Most of the time you're going for the damage, of course, because you're mid, but that's a conversation for the Conquest video later on. After this one, actually. Probably next week. But anyways, so at this point, what Heimdall and I are doing is just looking for poke, we're farming, and that's really about it. And we have better poke than they do, realistically. Particularly me, now that I'm level 5. My Meteor has better range than anyone else in this lane. In fact, I throw out some poke here, and this distracts the Atlas enough that he doesn't really follow through with his ult. You'll notice he ulted the Heimdall but deviated to me. He wanted to scare me off, specifically so I couldn't capitalize further on Merlin. I was originally going to go to left, but you can actually see where I noticed. Hold on. I start going left, and you can see on the minimap here, Heimdall ults Merlin quite obviously, and he got him towards our side of the field as well. So I go on ahead and I come in, and I'm hoping for a kill here. I go pretty aggressive on this. If I'd hit that second Meteor, he would have died there. Unfortunately, I goofed it, because I wasn't expecting him to aggro back, realistically. The interesting kill on Nemesis. Now, you can actually see me react to a bunch of different things here. Pay very attention to the minimap here. You're going to see Serket come in here. She's going to get spotted by minions. And you'll see me, and I immediately turn to leave, because I'm assuming at this point Serket is the damage. And she comes at me from behind. I dash forward. She goes for the Heimdall, who does a great job saving himself. That was a really excellent move. And then they come on to me. I beads so I can get into my gas, and the combination of my gas and the Poseidon's Whirlpool wipes out the Serket. I just happened to get last hit with the gas. Purely accident. Doesn't really make a difference, to be really honest. And I'm looking for those minions, but I see, of course, that Merlin is aggroing on me, so I just leave. I did want some more golden experience from the minions, but I ran out of meteors for safe poke, so I just went back. If I had another meteor, I probably would have gone back in to throw out one last meteor for minions, but I obviously didn't have that. So I see that Thor is fighting Nemesis here. Again, this is another sign that Nemesis is looking to play a sort of warrior role. I purely accidentally dodged the Serket attacks. That was not me having great reflexes. That was, I think, more her being surprised I was there and me accidentally walking in the correct direction. That was not a skilled moment for me, so let's not misattribute that to anything I was doing. That was purely accident. My good fortune. That's my luck kicking in there. But I go back over with Heimdall because I don't want to absorb too much of Poseidon's experience. He was in left lane with 2 other members of the team earlier, so he probably isn't as far along in level 8 as Heimdall and I. You can actually see at the top there he is not, so I wanted to leave him alone so he could do a little bit of farming on his own. I don't want to pull too much experience from him because only Heimdall and I have been splitting. I see Atlas going over left, so I'm moving over. I call that out very late. I should have called that earlier, right? A bit of a mistake on my part, but nothing too serious since Atlas didn't do anything with it. Good poke by Thor there, so I'm really eyeballing the Serket because, of course, she's lower. Grab some minions here and then see what Serket does. And I'm going to be making a pretty silly mistake, a very common mistake very soon, so keep an eye out for that. So I aggro onto the Artemis, do some good damage there. Some nice poke. Geb ults the Atlas. I think he's hoping for a kill as well. Atlas ults for some reason. And then Heimdall comes over, which is great. I'm still looking at getting a kill here at this point. I really want to kill. Get some good damage on her. Now, here's where I make my mistake. Now, when I get that stun, I'm looking here. Let's actually go back really slightly. So, Nemesis pops in. I think she blinks in, right? No. So she goes forward, and I get the stun. I dash in. I dashed in because I want that kill. She, of course, has her shield, and you can see the Artemis using her ult. I should have assumed Artemis had her ult up. I hadn't seen her use it. No one called it out. It was a safe assumption she still had it, and that this would get me killed. There's Serket there, of course. Now, I shouldn't have dashed in, but I had the very, very common issue of bloodlust. I saw the kill. I wanted the kill. I went for the kill, even when I should not have. This is very, very common. You see this a lot, especially in more aggressive metas like this one is. This is a very aggressive meta right now. A lot of players are falling into this trap. I just fell into it here. I die here. Full stop. They absolutely slapped me down. And I deserve it. That is totally deserved. I made a very poor decision, and I died for it. That is exactly how that's supposed to go. And even in the heat of the moment, it crossed my mind very briefly that this was a bad idea, right? But she was really low on health. I thought I could get her. She popped her shield. She lived. Would I have killed her if she didn't have the shield? Honestly, probably not, realistically speaking. Looking at the footage back, I probably would not have killed her even if she didn't have the shield. But I saw that low health, and I just went for it, right? Very common mistake. I still do it, of course. Everyone's still going to have moments like that. I don't care how long they've been playing the game. Now, I'm still being very aggressive. I went halfway up the lane, but I'm not too concerned because, of course, I have options. I had my stun up, of course. Great ult by the Heimdall, and I beautifully timed this. Just barely. You can see really quick. Let's actually go back really quick because this is actually some really incredible timing. I'm surprised I got this, but this is because I'm also diamond with Heimdall. Boom! You can see the instant that flame wave hits, because the flame wave, like I said in the introductory episode, hold on, I want to pause because I want to talk about the Atlas's invasion here, but that's a combination of me knowing the timing on Heimdall's ult and knowing my flame wave stops for a second and still can do damage. That is not skill, that is personal experience. Okay? I am diamond with Heimdall. I'm diamond with Agni. I've played both for very extended periods of time, among other gods. I know those timings extremely well. This is me being basically an old man in SMITE, okay? Now, the problem with Atlas invading here, because on first glance, this doesn't look like a serious issue, right? By the way, that's the Thor admonishing me for dying stupidly, and he's right. But anyways, the Atlas shouldn't be here diving the tower to kill me. It's not a good trade for their team, and I want to take a moment to explain why, because this matters later on in the match. This decision of Atlas's right here really hurts his team, because, as I mentioned earlier, Atlas is their primary dedicated frontline. As I mentioned before, the Nemesis winds up building like a warrior. She builds a lot of protections, and as the match goes on, as I mentioned earlier, you will see her get significantly tankier. But this early in the game, we're only 6 minutes into the game, no one's on their third item except possibly Poseidon and Heimdall at this point. And even then, that's very unlikely. Atlas has not fully built up significant enough protections to get away with this. And as their only frontline at this point, his death here would really put his team on the back foot in any future immediate engagement. We would actually have a really huge advantage in the next team fight because we have two mages, right? If I die, Poseidon can pick up that damage slack without much trouble, okay? We take a bit of a hit in the damage, but not really that much. But if Atlas dies right here, his team has no frontline. Nemesis might be starting to build her protections, but she is not a support. She's not a guardian. She's an assassin. She's originally designed for damage. She's not going to be durable enough to take his place at this point in the game. Okay? So this is a huge, huge mistake on the Atlas's part, and he's doing the same thing I just did with that Nemesis. He sees the low health. He's looking for that kill. He's got the bloodlust. Okay? Like I said, it happened to me earlier. Atlas is going through the same thing now, okay? It is the exact same thing. Now, I barely survived. If you pay attention to my health bar, I survived with 2 HP, purely because of the talisman and the stacks that I have on the Warlock staff. But this is a huge mistake for Atlas, purely because he is their only legitimate frontline, because Nemesis hasn't had the chance to build up her protections yet, and as an assassin she has lower baseline protections than Atlas does, as well as a lower max HP. So this is really going to hurt his team in the next immediate 30 seconds or so. Okay, so he grabs me, lovely, barely dodge away, got the 2 HP. Thor kills him, and now his team is in trouble for 20 seconds more specifically. They've just lost 2 people, including their only legitimate frontliner. I've got Soul Gen built up. We're looking to aggress. And you can see the team in the left lane pushing hard in left. Okay, I go over here to really quickly throw down some fire on those minions so we can push, some minions under their tower and have them lose golden experience that way. But we had a really aggressive push, and you can see where they almost got, I think that's Serket back there. So, yeah, it's Serket. No, I'm sorry, that was Merlin back there. Pardon me. Oh, no, it was Artemis, I think. Regardless, they almost killed somebody. Here's Serket going in, and Atlas, even though he's respawned, he's not back yet. Boom. Thor gets to kill her, because Atlas hasn't returned, and we get away with that because Atlas died. If Atlas hadn't died, he might have been present to save her life. But he did die under our tower, and he hadn't respawned long enough. Okay? And now he's on the warpath because now he's got something to prove at this point. And, you know, they go ham. Poseidon unleashes a beautiful ult. We pick up Atlas again, and that's going to be, you know, 20 seconds again. Sure, but another 5 or 10 seconds for him to get back to the front lines. So they're going to be in trouble again. I spooked the Nemesis enough. She didn't know I didn't have my Meteor, but she moved appropriately. Now, this looks like a risky move on my part. I want to explain this as well. This looks like a very risky decision, but it is not. First off, Atlas is dead, so they do not have any legitimate front line, especially now that Nemesis is gone. So it's just 3 squishy targets. I have a lot of health at this point from Soul Gem, Warlock Staff. I've got some protections from the Talisman. I'm not as in danger, and furthermore, my entire team is here and left. This is a 5v3, and I'm hoping we can do some serious damage to the tower, but me being here forces the enemy team to pay attention to 2 directions at once, which increases the likelihood that they will be caught off guard by something somebody does. So this is not as risky as it looks, okay? This is a calculated decision. This is not me wanting a kill. This is me forcing their attention in 2 different places. And the Geb comes in, slaps down 2 of them. Exactly because they were so busy with Thor and I that they didn't see the Geb coming up from behind. It was a great move. It puts the team in a very good position at this point. We're beginning to pull ahead. What we want here is a snowball at this point. And that was a great fight for us. We didn't take the tower, which I wasn't expecting to at 8 minutes, honestly, but I was hoping we could do some damage to it. We didn't wind up doing any damage to it, anything meaningful anyways, but we did get some golden experience, and that is going to help us in the future. Okay, but it was a great fight. And, you know, at this point, I'm just leaning back. I'm looking to farm a little bit more before I go back. I don't want to get into a fight, alright? I'm half dead. I only have half my mana. Artemis is aggressing onto me, so I dash back, and I'm just going to clear this last wave here and get out of dodge. I see Artemis moving over. I give them a warning that she's moving left. She decides not to, but the warning still stands. Now, at this point, I'm looking to build up more damage, because we're ahead as a team. I'm also ahead of the enemy team. I'm level 14, their highest is 13, so I can get away with a bit more damage. I wait a couple of seconds to just get the Spirit Desolation full, and off I go, okay? But I'm looking for that more damage at this particular point in time. I'm looking for that cooldown. I'm looking for that passive more specifically. I'm looking to unleash even more damage. Now, I'm not sure why Serket initiated on me here. Even if she'd ulted me, I still would have lived, honestly, and just backed and been fine. I think she was trying to keep me from going over here, but we had a 4v4, but we have the advantage here, right? So I wasn't really concerned about that either. It was a strange decision by the Serket to attack me under that tower. Very odd. But we do get the Juggernaut, so what I'm kind of looking at is, do I want to push up with the Juggernaut, or do I want to go back and teleport to the Juggernaut? And I decide I'm going to stick around and see what I can accomplish here. You know, we have an advantage as a team, so I want to press that into a tower somewhere, is what I'm looking for as a mage right now. And I decide I'm going to go back. This winds up being a mild mistake, by the way. I go back, and I'm looking to go get the Spirit of the Magus again. I want to increase my damage output here. And the Juggernaut dies right before I can teleport to it, which is deeply unfortunate. It was a miscalculation on my part. I should have backed earlier when I was first thinking about it. I didn't, and here we are. But I move left because, of course, Nemesis is doing something in left lane. She's just going for the Meteor. And here comes Atlas. I beads this because I know Serket is there, right? Nemesis dives me. And this is, you can see right here, she's starting to get tanky. She's just starting to get that defense up there, where she actually presents a legitimate frontline threat. And I'm making a note of that, but it's still only 2 people building really tanky, and I'll have 20% penetration from the combination of Warlock Staff and the Spirit of the Magus, so I'm not that concerned at this point. Thor blinks in, he gets some good poke. I try to get something on the Nemesis, but she just heals off of it with her shield, because I keep forgetting about that for some reason. I have a problem with that consistently throughout most of the match. I go on ahead and poke her here too. It accomplishes nothing. I really shouldn't have bothered. It was just a waste of my Meteor. But that's fine, it kept her on her toes, I guess. Thor dives in, goes right after the Nemesis, who, incidentally, still survives. Now, I dash in and completely miss, which is fine, but Geb is really tanking the damage here. Geb's done a great job as a support, by the way. A whole bunch, I don't know what exactly happened in right lane, but it turned out okay. Heimdall might have died, but he took Serket with him, which is fine. At this point, again, I'm still looking for something to happen. we've been winning these fights as a team, but we're not really able to do anything with them, so the fights are too close. So I'm looking to get that farm in there. I miss some poke on Merlin. I throw out some auto attacks on this, because again, I'm looking for that tower. If we can get a tower, we can push into another one really easily. I see the Artemis being really low, so I walk over there, and I'm looking to get that kill, but she's already booked it, right? She used her second ability to increase her movement speed, probably, to book it that fast. And of course, now I'm in trouble a little bit, but I just Aegis and throw my dash out there to get away. Not really a big problem. And I'm at this point looking for some poke. I start going back, but I decide against it ultimately. As I said, I wanted some poke here because I still have enough mana for a couple of abilities. I can dash if I really need to, so it's not that risky. I have, of course, my meteors, which are dirt cheap. Nemesis tries to get me, which is, again, very interesting because she's not building damage. The Artemis almost dies to Poseidon, and I'm just getting some damage here on the Nemesis. I wind up healing her a little bit, and then the Thor is going to ult in. Now, I move forward because I think Thor is going in, but when he just lands here to pick the safe option, I just leave. I was only moving forward to see if I could help Thor there when he landed, but he didn't land on the enemy, so I just left. I would have gone back in, and if... I would have gone back in if he had. Now, Heimdall unfortunately dies here, which is fine. I move left because Serket is still up to shenanigans in left lane. She really wants that left tower. I can't decide if she's genuinely trying to get the tower, if she's just farming, or if she's just trying to get some attention away from right lane. I'm not sure which it is, because it ultimately doesn't come to anything, so I don't really have any kind of stated motive that I can offer as a possibility. It's one of those three, though. But yeah, we're just poking at this point. We're not really expecting much out of this. Well, at least I'm not. But I can see that the enemy is starting to gather up over here, which is pretty interesting. So they're looking to make a concerted fight for what I assume is the Juggernaut, because it's about to respawn in the left. I go pretty ham on the Artemis because I see that opportunity. I'm familiar enough with Agni. Again, I had my beads. I did take a risk using my dash to do that, but of course I see my team. Actually, let's talk about this in a little bit more detail, because this is actually pretty interesting. So you get this poke here, right? And Geb goes in a little bit, and then he decides to leave because he doesn't want to tangle with Artemis, which is understandable. He probably also sees Merlin back there. Serket's coming in, right? And then he ults the Artemis, and I dash in. Now, I dash in very specifically because even though there's all these people here, right, our team is also pretty present. See, we have the Serket here, and this is what I'm basing my decision on. See, Geb ults here, and that Artemis is really low. And I have Spear of the Magus, I have Spear of Desolation, I've got, you know, my stacks on Warlock Staff. I'm fine. I have almost full HP, almost full mana. I see the Serket fighting the Thor here. Merlin's way the hell over here, and I can see just in the background Nemesis, which is totally fine. I realize at this point that quite obviously Nemesis is building defense, so she's not going to be hitting me that hard. So the only legitimate serious damage here is Artemis, who I'm looking to kill. So I'm completely comfortable dashing in here to kill the Artemis, and I know I can do it too, because I know she has no escape and she doesn't have anything to get away from that, right? Poseidon ults to save me, which is great, but I think I probably would have lived anyways because it was just Nemesis and Atlas. They aren't doing any damage. We absolutely slapped them down. It's absolutely fantastic. Great wall by Thor there. Serket does ult me, but Geb totally saves me from that. Again, I probably still would have lived if I'd just turned around and left even with the ult. The shield just ensured that I could take some more free damage from Merlin for no reason, which is great for me. So I go back at this point, having absolutely slapped a whole bunch of people, which is, again, fantastic and all. I decide I'm going to go for the Bancroft's talent. I accidentally start Shifter's Shield, actually, though, really quick. That's not what I actually wanted. I wanted Bancroft's Claw, and the reason I want Claw over Shifter's Shield is because we are ahead. I'm doing extremely well. I'm level 19. I'm the highest level person in this match. I'm very ahead, so I want to capitalize on that by doing as much damage as possible. That's why I go on to the Merlin here. I whiff a couple of shots. I probably would have killed him if I'd hit all those. Great job by the Thor picking that up. I was missing too many abilities for me to be reliable there, so I'm glad he got that. Absolutely fantastic pickup there. This is a brief leave by the Artemis. Now, at this point, they should be playing more defensively, alright? The Serket and the Atlas are already committed to this fight, obviously, so they can't really do anything with that. But the Artemis does... I assume she crashed because she comes back in a couple of minutes. And the Atlas, of course, can't really leave because he was in too deep when she left in the first place. Nemesis probably entered to try to get Atlas out, but there's not a whole lot Nemesis can do because she only really has slows. She doesn't have anything more hard-hitting in terms of crowd control. So we take the tower, which is kind of expected here. We're ahead. Artemis is gone. They're not surrendering, though, so they're expecting her back. Great call, by the way, by Geb on the Juggernaut kill. That's absolutely fantastic. Now I'm looking to go back in. Geb tells me to retreat. That's fine. He is the support. He should be making the calls. I go with him. I'm not sure why we retreated. We probably could have fought there. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I do know why we retreated. Another fight there wouldn't have gotten us anything. Even if we'd killed them all, it's unlikely we would have been able to take the Phoenix at that point in time, right? So we settled for the tower and right, which is still a fine pickup. And they're, doing some poke here. You can see that the Artemis has come back now. And they're going for the Juggernaut. I try to get some poke here. I almost get killed for it. I probably would have been in more danger if I didn't have Aegis, but I do have my dash, I do have my Aegis, so I am able to get out of there. But if I didn't have both of those, I might have died there. So I was being a little too aggressive. This is a recurring problem for me in this match, as you notice, because I'm just doing really well, and I'm trying to capitalize it and getting really arrogant about it. This winds up getting me killed later on, but we'll talk about that when we come to it. So I teleport up to the Juggernaut because I want to gank right. I called the gank, which is a pretty bold move for me, but they're pushing into tower. They're actually diving it. So it's a really good decision. You slap down Atlas, who really doesn't belong there in the first place. And if Atlas seems kind of squishy, there is a reason for that. Frankly, he is. He built some really interesting... He made some questionable item decisions that we'll talk about at the end of the match. But now we're trying to kill the Nemesis because, of course, she's their last front line. She's gone, and now it's just 3 damage. So this is going to be a really interesting fight for us, and I'm hoping that Thor and Geb go in. They do. I was going to loop around, but I decided to just go ham. I'm looking to get whacked by the boar, but Artemis dies, so I just decided to go for it. I didn't want to dash in and have the boar stun me under tower or something. Slap down the Circuit. I just put down the gas for when she landed because I knew Heimdall had ulted her, and I figured the gas could help a little bit or something. We take the tower, and here's where I'm going to be making my mistake because I stick around, alright, which is not the smartest move. We fight here, okay? We take out Atlas. This is great. Everyone loves to see this. I land a fantastic meteor right there, pick up a nice Atlas kill, and that's fine. So Geb starts to leave, and I, in my glorious arrogance, keep fighting. Okay, Thor is looking for an ambush. They're kind of thinking about it. They're kind of on the fence, but Geb is clearly leaving. You can see him backing right here. Okay, Geb's telling us to be careful. He's telling us to leave because Circuit is coming back up. And you can even see my arrogance right here. No, I'm the greatest. I'm on a power trip. Okay, I want to kill Artemis again. I think I can do it and get away with this. I have not noticed Circuit has respawned. Okay, so I start fighting the Artemis. The Nemesis aggresses, and here's where I realize I'm stupid. So, the Circuit ults me, Nemesis ults me, I get slapped. Again, I totally deserved that. Okay, that was the second most common thing I see Smite players do, including myself. Power tripping and thinking you can do more than you can. I had no business being there. Even if I had killed Artemis, it wouldn't have meant anything. We certainly weren't going to get the Phoenix off of the back of an Artemis kill. It didn't matter. So I died for nothing, and when they're behind and you're ahead and you die for nothing, that's a bad thing, because it's going to put them in a better position to better fight you in the future. Now, this fortunately doesn't hurt the team's victory later on, but it could have if the circumstances were different, okay? If the margin were narrower, if we had a smaller lead, that could have been a really bad thing, okay? So I want you to understand that my arrogance could have been really bad if we had less of a lead. Just straight up right off the top. It was a very stupid decision for me to stay there. Now, originally I was just going to take the minions, by the way, coming back to the match. Poseidon started Apophis, which was a bold move, very risky, but it pays off. But I want you to understand that was quite the risk. So now Thor is going in, and I'm just making my moves, right? I'm going to go in, my ego having been destroyed, thankfully. And I encounter Circuit, and we both completely whiff, which is fine. They take out Atlas, which is great news for us, because that's one of their frontliners down, which is good. I don't know why I'm chasing Circuit. There's no way on earth I'm going to catch up to a Circuit, not as Agni. But I leave that behind sooner rather than later, which is good. and we're looking for this Phoenix. I want this Phoenix. We've killed Atlas. We theoretically can take this Phoenix on paper. Poseidon's going ham on this with his auto attacks, so that's fine. And we're just looking for something, right? We start going ham on Nemesis. Unfortunately, she lives. We switch targets to Artemis. Great job by the Poseidon and the Thor there. And now we're really looking to go in. We are able to take this, which is fantastic. And we push on to the Titan, which is a really aggressive move, but we have a really significant lead at this point. And Poseidon straight up leaves, okay? He just bails because he wasn't expecting us to try for this, I think. I know he's concerned about the Merlin, but we're actually pushing Titan. And we actually take this right here. We win right here. But it was a great match to demonstrate some really common mistakes I see myself make still to this day after, I don't even know how many years. It's been, oh gosh, it's got to be like a decade. And by the way, they're teasing Poseidon here because he left. Poseidon actually played really well, and they know that. He's got a great score. But he did leave instead of fighting at the Titan for partially understandable reasons, but it is still very funny. So let's talk about builds, because the way the enemy team specifically built, more specifically the Atlas, is very interesting. Now, my team, just to cover them really quick, really nice build. I've already been talking about my build, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on that. You know why I built the way I did, right? I wanted to be a little bit more of a defensive mage. I wanted to splash a little bit of health and defense in there to be a little bit more durable, because I had the Poseidon to pick up that damage slack, and he absolutely did a fantastic job with that. You can see, you know, we might have had similar kills and assists, but he had more minion kills, obviously. He was doing a great job wiping out minions, clearing camps, doing all of that great stuff. He did an absolutely fantastic job. Great build here. Absolutely fantastic. Thor's build, a little bit confusing, but overall really good. The build for warrior type, absolutely fantastic here. I do like the spectral armor of both Thor and Geb here to counter build the Serket, who is leaning extremely heavily on crits, which is not unusual for damaged Serket builds, because of course she can crit with her zigzag, and that can be very, very hard hitting if you let it. So that's some great awareness by them. Also the fact that Merlin was the only one doing legitimately large amounts of magic damage meant they could both skimp a little on the magic protections. You'll notice Thor has 2 physical protection items, but only Genji's guard. And Geb only has the stronghold, the amulet of the stronghold, for dedicated magic protections, which is absolutely fantastic. It's totally fine here because, again, Atlas wasn't building damage. Merlin was the only legitimate magic damage. It was a great decision. I will say my only piece of criticism on my team's builds is I do think, given the circumstances, that Heimdall building both Dominance and Executioner is a little bit overkill given their team composition. Sure, the Nemesis was building protections, and obviously so is Atlas, but those are the only ones, and I think he would have been just fine with one or the other. Realistically speaking, I do think he really went overboard on the penetration, and I think he probably would have done slightly better. Actually, we can't even see his score here. I think he would have done... Oh, that's right, because we have to go through this really quick. But I do think the Heimdall would have done slightly better if he hadn't gone so hard on penetration. Just my perspective there, right? Now, I'm going to save the Atlas for last, alright? The Artemis, of course, was a little bit behind because she lost her connection, but she still had a very odd build. Now, I want you to understand that most hunters really want auto attacks. Not a whole lot of hunters can successfully pull off an ability-based build. Neith can, for one. There are a couple of others that can. Artemis is not one of these because her second ability boosts her attack speed and her movement speed. Her rain of arrows does some damage, but is primarily needed for the slow, her traps root and cripple the target so she can get the bonus damage from her passive. Her ult stuns them and does some damage, primarily, again, to set them up for some really nice volleys of arrows. She is intended to be a auto attacker. She's not one of those mages that does really well with an ability-based build. You can occasionally splash in something that'll give you a nice benefit off of your abilities. For example, Hydra's Lament is a very powerful item on Artemis, but she really shouldn't be building Heartseeker or Bluestone Pendant because the abilities that she has that do actually inflict damage are not exactly what I would call consistent. The boar's consistency depends upon where you deploy him. In the middle of a team fight, while that's obviously optimal, you still aren't in full control. Who he targets next in a team fight, or even who he targets first, is quite a bit unpredictable, okay? There's some control over the initial one based on proximity, obviously, but proximities change after that first impact, so it can get really difficult predicting where he's going to go in the heat of a team fight when there's a lot going on and there's a whole lot of bodies scrambling around trying to kill each other. Secondarily, the traps are also very inconsistent in terms of being able to proc ability effects, which is another problem building an ability-based Artemis. So the Bluestone isn't going to proc as often as you would think it would on paper, because the actual practical application of traps is, again, inconsistent. The only consistent ability damage she has is her rain of arrows. So I'm not fond of the attempt at building an ability-based Artemis here, because it does not work in almost all situations. If you played Artemis constantly as an ability-based Artemis, would you do well in some games? Absolutely. Again, there are exceptions to all rules. But if you're going to be building abilities on a hunter, use Neith, use Chiron. I mean, there's better options for that gameplay style in hunters other than Artemis, and it's just not effective, okay, just flat out. So this is one of the main problems with Artemis here, because she wasn't going to be hitting that hard. She didn't really have the attack speed, because the only attack speed boost I think is on Failnaught and Executioner, of course, but that's not really a whole lot there. She wasn't building really high power, because while Heartseeker offers some really high power, the rest of these items offer pretty middling power, 40-ish range, which is good, but it's not like powerful other than Heartseeker. So she wasn't building enough attack speed, she wasn't building enough power. She was building for abilities that are too inconsistent for her to get away with. Alright, Merlin's build, totally fine. Mild criticism on Tablet of Destinies. This probably should have been his third item, because this stacks and it takes a while to stack. So I would say that probably would have been better for him to build that as his third item and go Spirit Desolation as his fourth, but that's just a minor quibble. Serket's build is mostly fine. I like these items here. Jotun's Wrath is a bit overkill on the cooldowns. I really don't think Serket needs that much in the way of cooldowns, considering she wants to intersparse the occasional auto attack to proc the poisons with, because she only procs those with an auto attack. So you don't need like stupid amounts of cooldown here. So I do think that was a bit overkill. I think Failnaught actually would have been a much better pickup here. I don't think she can build Failnaught, though. I think she gets Arendite. Yeah, as an assassin, she gets Arendite, so scratch that. But Jotun's Wrath is a little overkill in terms of, oh, I want cooldowns. Jotun's Wrath isn't the answer here. She would have been better off with either more crits or some penetration, because she only had 10% penetration. She needed a little bit more. So some penetration would have been really nice. Serrated Edge would have been a great choice here as well. Also, her starter item is a bit interesting. The Corrupted Bluestone is a very questionable choice when going for crits. If you're going with the crit build, get Gilded Arrow, evolve it to the Ornate Arrow, okay? I believe it's the Ornate Arrow that does the crits. Just such a better experience. You can overcap your crits more, you can get more power out of your Deathbringer that way. I do have to say, I mean, the Jotun's Wrath is an okay pick. It's not terrible by any means. It's just not as good for Serket with what else she was building. It doesn't combo well with the crit build, but otherwise by itself it's fine. But the Bluestone was very questionable here, because she was going for the crit build. She was going for the crit build early on because she built Rage first. She knew she was going for the crit build, and she still went with the Corrupted Bluestone. Very strange decision here. Nemesis, pretty standard tank build here, although I will say, given that she had Warrior's Axe, I am assuming she intended to go with the Axe of Animosity late game, which would have been for auto attacks. So I do think Shogun's Kusari would have been a better pickup than than Genji's Guard, and I think Berserker Shield would have been a better pickup than Glad's Shield. But that's assuming she was going to go Animosity, because when I build Tank Nemesis, that's what I go for. So this is mildly colored by my own personal preferences, but she might have been going for the Sundering Axe, in which case that what I said about these two items doesn't really apply. But now let's talk about the Atlas. And you can see right away, he wasn't building his protections early enough. Now, I understand why he has the Hourglass. Okay, this is not really a mystery. He wanted the MP5. That's pretty obvious, and that's totally fine, except as a support, you have access to Guardian's, I believe it's Guardian's Blessing, for mana from minion assists, so the choice to build this specifically is somewhat odd. This makes a lot of sense on really aggressive Guardians, and Atlas can be aggressive, but not really that aggressive in the early game a lot of the time. When I'm talking about aggressive Guardians, I mean Sobek, who has to dash in with his pluck. I'm talking Cerberus, who has to, jump in. To some extent, does Atlas need to charge in to pull people in? To an extent, yeah, but he can throw the Astrolabe and do the same thing from a distance as well. So he doesn't need to jump into the middle of the enemy team like Cerberus needs to, like Sobek needs to, like Kuzenbo even needs to, or Khepri, right? They all need to be there. Atlas, with his ability to use that movement ability from his Astrolabe, he doesn't need to be right there in the conflict to pull people out and set them up for a kill. He doesn't need that. So, quite honestly, he gets away with Sentinel's Gift so much better because he can stand back and safely let his frontline farm, as opposed to a more damaging Guardian like Sobek, who has some really high flat damage and tends to kill minions. I don't normally build Sentinel's Gift on Sobek for that reason. I usually will build something else when I'm playing support Sobek, because it's just too hard for him to get those assists a lot of the time, and Sentinel's Gift winds up being a waste. But Atlas doesn't have that issue. He does not have that issue. Can he kill waves? Yes, he can. The Astrolabe Pulse is really great at that, but it takes forever in the early game because you haven't built up anything. And he doubles down on this lack of protections with Stone of Gaia, which, again, a nice item in the right circumstances, but as your second item without any protection bonuses is a problem, alright? Because Atlas wandered in here with, basically, he started the fight with baseline protections, because the Hourglass isn't giving him protections, and he built it for the MP5. Stone of Gaia isn't giving him any protections, it gives him max health, sure, but it's not giving him any protections. So his early game, he was so fragile, and even later on, he builds E-Staff as a 5th item, which, I'll get to that in a second, but this is probably another big mistake of the Atlases here, but we'll get back to that. Talisman of Energy, totally fine here. Great item. Works well with him, works well with Nemesis, works well with Artemis. No issues here. Glad Shield, a bit aggressive. Still fine. We're okay with this. Ethereal Staff. Ethereal Staff takes away a percentage of the enemy target's max health and mana, which makes it really good for very, very tanky compositions. And this was quite the interesting choice. Now, it is an effective item against our team comp. Geb is tanky. I have a lot of max HP because I built Warlock Staff. Thor is building like a warrior. E-Staff, as an item, is very effective against our team comp as it built. Atlas already was down 2 slots without protections. He has no protections on his starter item. Now, eventually, I assume he would have gone for the alternate timeline, which is fine, but that's still only 20 of each protection. And Stone of Gaia still wouldn't have any, okay? So the problem with E-Staff is not that it would be ineffective against our team composition, because it would in fact be very effective against our team composition, and having more max HP by stealing it from the enemy team is a nice bonus, to be sure. But he already didn't have enough protections, and building E-Staff, while it does offer him max health, is just tripling down on that questionable decision of not having enough protections, right? And then, of course, Pestilence, even though we really didn't self-heal that often. Sure, Heimdall had the Cloak and the Devourer's Gauntlets, which is a pretty good amount of lifesteal, but he's also got no protections, he's very squishy, so that's not as big of a deal, just blitz him down. Poseidon had just the Bancroft's Claw. I had some in Soul Gem, and a little bit of lifesteal out of Spirit of the Magus, but that's in Bancroft's Claw, obviously, but I just don't think that Pestilence was necessarily his best option. He probably picked it at a combination because we had 3 people who could technically self-heal through lifesteal, and additionally, he probably wanted a bit more magic protections, considering both Poseidon and I were laying down some pretty heavy damage there. Probably that has a lot to do with it as well. But that is what I wanted to talk to you about here, so I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned. And I thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a great 24 hours.